Okay, I think we're live. So happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to our NoCodeOps live community show. If this is your first time here with us, we're an international community for professional operators who leverage no code to scale up and optimize their career. So we've been running these live events every Thursday because we want to make sure that our members are indeed equipped with the best knowledge and skills in order for them to achieve those results. That's why we also invite expert speakers, because they come here and they teach you all they know about the best solutions with no-code tools. So this month in particular, we've been running kind of a different concept of what we usually do. We're building a CRM in public. And so this is an amazing opportunity for you to kind of become the hero of your company and just rebuild the whole CRM using no code and using especially Airtable and Zapier. So without further ado, this is the second episode of our Building Public event. Today, we will be focusing a lot on automations. So let me bring in our expert, Gareth. And hi, Gareth. Great to have you here today. And
thanks for having me, Claudia.
Of course. And our CEO, Phil at NoCodeOps. Hi, Phil. Great to have you here.
Hey, y'all. Good to be here.
Awesome. And I was just telling the audience, that we've been running our first episode last week where we kind of showed best practice on how to set up your CRM using Airtable. And if I'm not wrong, today, we're going to dive into a little bit more of automations.
That's right. Here we go.
Amazing. All right. And just a reminder to everyone in the audience, we want these kind of events to be as interactive as possible. So make sure you use the chat. Let us know if you have any questions throughout the whole episode. And we'll make sure that we'll answer them for you. Amazing. Guys, would you like me to bring in the screen?
Yeah, you can share my my screen.
Perfect. There we go.
Cool beans. So, hey, Gareth, good to have you back.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I'm looking forward to kicking this thing up to the next level. Should we do a quick recap of what we did last week, just for anybody new?
Yeah, for sure. So last week, so if everyone can see my screen here, last week what we talked about on the NoCodeOps news site, right, is that we have several forms, right? So we have the form to join operator beta, right, which is this. The form to join our NoCodeOps community, which is this, and our conference form, and a few other kind of offshoot forms of this, right? But it is that we have all these different places that folks can start engaging with the NoCodeOps ecosystem. And sometimes one person may fill out one of these forms. Sometimes one person may fill out 2 or 3 of these forms. And what we were initially doing was zapping all of these from Webflow into Airtable, into separate tables within the same base. And Gareth made the point that you should actually have these all as these records as part of one table. So we worked on consolidating that and went over all of the reasons why that's best practice. And now we're going to take a step further today and relate those records to actual contacts that we are creating with automations. So Gareth, anything that you want to cover or sum up there based on anything you shared from last time?
Yeah, I mean, just in summary, I think the big key takeaway from last week was, hey, if we're dealing with Airtable or any relational database, we need to be very conscious of every new table that we create, and it represents a set of data. So in this example, we had multiple different forms, and it's a common thing that we see with our clients where they build a table for each form they have, but in actuality, we can differentiate the form submitted and put it all in one place, and that's what we worked on last week.
Amazing. So here we go. So Gareth, just jumping right in here, I've got all of these form submissions, and 1 is from John and 2 are from Jane, and they are all actually 3 different forms.
Right.
And now they're all in the same place, right? So my very first question is, before we start relating these to contacts, I had one question about our tools. So our tools come in by just the nature that they come in via Webflow. When someone goes here and selects tools, these are all essentially true, false, right?
Okay.
And so that's how they come in. They don't come in with the actual name, right? And so how
they come in in order of the tool that's been put on the form. Is that right?
Yeah, so it'll say Airtable is the field name, right? So these are all separate field signatures. So you say Airtable, true or false. Zapier,
Oh, okay.
true or false, right? And so we zap that in to Airtable, right? And it essentially looks like this: tool 1, tool 2, tool 3, checked or not checked, right?
Okay.
And one thing I learned since our last call was that it's actually good to have like a select table instead of multi-select, right? So that way you can not have to repeat every time in a new table your options, right? You can. Do you want to explain why that's best practice?
Help me understand what you were saying there. Sorry, rewind again.
Yeah. So, okay. So my goal here, let me rewind here. My goal is that see tool 1, tool 2, tool 3, right? How they're just checked.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, for visual purposes, would like to see these represented in almost like a link to record or multi-select kind of field instead. And I'm wondering, first of all, is there a way to represent that? So I could see, like, I essentially want it to end up looking like this, right? Like tools, tool 1.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
2, right? Tool 3, and so forth, right? And
So
I want
if tool 2 is checked, you want tool 2 to be the drop down or to be selected in your multi-select.
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways we can tackle this, right? Number one, and probably the purest approach would be to say, hey, in the automation, let's convert all that data, like from a checkbox to the multi-select. So, we could build, in theory, this thing that says, if tool 2 is checked, then we're going to put tool 2 in the multi-select box. And we can skip the whole checked box scenario. That's one approach. Another approach is to keep it the way it is. And there's an advantage to this, but I'll get to it in a second. Keep it the way it is, where we're checking these boxes, and then just basically hide all those checkbox fields and build an automation in Airtable that says, hey, if tool 2 gets checked, just update to the tools with tool 2.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Kind of like two approaches to the same thing. Now, the reason I like approach number 1 is because we're eradicating all these superfluous fields. We technically don't need all these checked boxes, right? But that's the way that it's built in Webflow. And so the reason that I do like that approach is because it's actually more straightforward in Zapier. And the thing to remember with Zapier is Zapier charges you on your plan for every task that you perform. So when you build a lot of logic inside of your Zap automation, you're going to be burning through a lot of automated tasks that could increase your Zapier bill unnecessarily. So at the end of the day, it might be simpler from a cost perspective. Just build the automation in a straightforward manner that adds those checked boxes like you've done. And then inside of Airtable, we don't get charged for our automated tasks. So now that we've grabbed that data from Webflow and plugged it into Airtable, we can build an automation internal to Airtable that says, that box got checked. Let's add the tool. Cost me nothing to do. And it didn't run up my bill with Zapier.
Yep. So before we do that, before we build that automation that populates these tools, right, that are coming in checked or not checked from Zapier, right, into here, my question for you is, would it be better to make this a multi-select or a link to record and build a select table?
That is the $1 million question. Thank you for asking. So here's the thing. A single select field or a multi-select field. So let me rewind just a bit. These are field types in Airtable. We're basically discussing, from a philosophical standpoint, 3 different field types in Airtable: a multi-select, a single select, or a link to a record. What's the advantage for using one over the other? Well, a single select versus a multi-select, the only change here is, do I select one thing from a drop-down, or can I select multiple things? So obviously in our case, we're looking at a multi-select. Okay. Now the next question is, should I do a multi-select or should I do a linked relationship to another table? If you think about it, these are very similar in nature, right? A select field versus another table. The only reason that I would ever recommend building a table in place of a select field is if we need more information about the thing we're linking to. So, for example, if you said, "Hey, Gareth, I need to go in at one point and sum up, because I know the cost of each of these softwares. I want to build let's say a table and link to it, and then I can sum up the total that this person is spending per tool. So I can see that they spend on Airtable $100 a month, and they're spending $50 a month on Zapier, and I want to roll all that information up. Well, then it makes sense to have another table that you're linked to where you can interact with that data. But
so let me ask this, Gareth. Like a very pure example of that for us is like Operator as a tool, right? Which is the no-code infrastructure tool that we're building, right? That people are signing up for beta or want to hear more about. When somebody signs up with Airtable Zapier, that's great. But we also want to keep track of what other tools people are signing up with, so we can sum those up to see what are the most popular tools that we don't support yet that we should highly consider supporting in the future.
Yep. So great perspective here. And so number one, we can absolutely get you that output with a multi-select field and build a graph. So we can simply say, get a pie chart of the percentages of tools chosen, or we can build a linked relationship to a third table, call it tools, and as you've described, basically, get the same output. And it doesn't. Here's the thing. It doesn't cost us anything to build that additional table. So there's no negative to it, in the sense that the only thing that we have to be concerned about is, number one, not making our database too cluttered, right? Because we don't want to have 100 different tables to scroll past, because that's a nightmare to navigate. And number two, let's be wary of the record count limitation of Airtable. This is the greatest limitation of Airtable. It's a cloud-based database, and it caps out at a certain number of records because it's just too much data. So I don't think we're in danger of hitting, a record limitation just yet. So I wouldn't have any negative feelings about building a linked relationship here. The short answer to your question is,
if you're telling me that I can still sum those things, my only other ever concern is if I need tools as a drop down somewhere else, I have to rebuild it all, right?
Right.
That's the only other negative, correct?
That's a really great point as well. If you ever need to link to tools in another part of this, if you're building a multi-select field, you have to recreate the whole multi-select field. If you have a linked relationship to a table, all you have to do is link to that table again, and all that data would stay true. And
I guess the last thing is, if I keep it as a multi-select here, right? So I put tool one here, et cetera, right? If I do this, then there is no place for me to look at who's using tool 2.
That's true. I mean, what you would need to do is, if you wanted to see that data, you'd have to go into your forms table where you're at currently, create a view, apply a filter, and say, only show me those.
I guess you could do that, which is actually a clean way of doing it too.
Yeah.
Guys, let me just check quickly with our audience, because this looks as if we're looking into a kind of D&D gaming session. I love it. You're geeking out so hard about this whole Airtable database. I just want to check with everyone here if they're following, if it's making sense for them. Just give me a thumbs up, or in the chat, wherever. I know that we have Omkar, AJ, Benjamin, and more people I can see across our social media. So I just want to make sure that people are following as well. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat and interact with us. Just my little
please do. And just know that what we've essentially just done is debated whether to use multi-select or a select table. And I think in this case, we're going to stick with multi-select. So so my question for you then, Gareth, my friend, is how do I turn this data into this data?
Right. So this is actually quite simple. But before we get to that, I'm going to throw something else out there that I'd like to see changed just in the structure here before we go on. Right now, what we have is when a form comes in, we're naming the form by the name of the contact. And if you recall from last week, I kind of have two different things I like to use as rules for my primary field there. I want to make it identify what I'm looking at, and I want to make it as unique as possible. So this, the way that we've built this naming convention, this is the name of the person, which makes sense to have it as the primary field in the contacts table. But here, if somebody submits form 1, I want to see something that says Jane Doe submitted form 1. Jane Doe submitted form 2, because what this is the submission of that person. Benjamin. And we haven't established the linked relationship either yet. Do we have in our example here, do we have contacts in our second table?
I just put a contacts here as a blank thing for now, but we can build that.
Okay. Let's actually build a linked relationship to our contacts, so that full name real field that you created, let's make that a link to our contacts.
So but question.
Yeah.
If we do that, so that's great. I love that. But my question is, if we do that and a new form comes in, how is that going to impact contacts? Or
yes, okay, so good. So here's the thing. We want our data to live at the source of the data. So when somebody submits a form, this is very common practice in forms. A lot of the data that we're capturing is unique to a person or to an organization. And a lot of the data that we're capturing simultaneously, some of the other data is related to the form. So we, in our automation, will segment this data and put it where it belongs and connect the things accordingly. So imagine a scenario where I've got two forms, and Phil, you come to my website and you fill out the first form, and the first form says, "Who are you?" and you say, "I'm Phil, and my email is this." And then I ask you some questions about your favorite food. Okay, and then you answer those questions. And then on the next form you fill out, I say, "Who are you?" and you say, "I'm Phil, and this is my email." And then I ask you questions about your favorite animals, and you give me some information.
Right. And I've tried to represent that here with Jane filling out two forms that collect different information.
Precisely. When I record that data, only one person filled out those forms. So I'm only going to create one contact in my contacts table.
Correct.
And then I'm going to link that contact to two different form submissions. And on the first form, it's going to say, "Who filled this out?" And I'm going to say, "Well, the contact right here that we linked to. And Phil told me all about his favorite foods. And here's what he said."
Got it. I was thinking that there was going to be a separate thing called like link to contact record here, as opposed to it being the actual full name field.
So when we link to the contact, because of the fact that we're going to identify the contact as the full name, it will show up. It'll show up just fine in that linked relationship.
Got it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say formula is the form ID, and it's going to be concatenate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Concatenate full name real, comma, and I'll just put I gotta put the little.
I would challenge you here. I don't think company belongs in the forms table, because I feel like that's contact specific data.
I'm thinking company. Sorry. You're right. It should be full name. Full name. Let's just call it like space form submit, and then like the form name maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, is that enough to make it let's see. Is that good?
Yeah, just close your parenthesis. I think you should be golden.
And I'm just sharing the documentation with everyone in the chat who wants to, get their hands dirty with formulas on Airtable. And I just looked at my face because I accidentally shut down the stream, and I was like, I had a moment of panic, and that made me laugh so much. We're still here, still rolling.
Now these, if I get another conference one, right, I guess the name would be there, so that will change.
Yeah, right now we don't have a name in that field, so it's not looking terribly unique. But once we have a name, it is possible that Jane Doe comes back to our website and fills out the same form multiple times.
Yep.
But I think for the most part I would be okay with this. But this is the part where it becomes more art than science. You might want to say, well, I also want to include the date time of the form submission so that I know down to that granular detail how when that form came in. But we don't have to put that in the name per se.
Yeah, but we could, and let's just do it anyway, right?
Sure. We have a specific field called created time, I think. There you go. This is good. This is metadata on every record. We don't actually have to pass this in our automation. As soon as the record comes into existence, Airtable knows, and it will always remember.
Yep. And then here I can put in the formula. Wait. So Philip, I'm just gonna make a sentence. Submitted form.
And as you do that, Phil, question for the chat, because we have many people watching. What's the most complex, and I'm curious to know, what's the most complex database that you built with Airtable? And did you run into any kind of sort of limitations? This is a great opportunity for you as well to kind of troubleshoot any questions you might have. So let us know. I'd love to hear, use cases. Obviously, you're looking at, best practice on how to build a CRM. But I would love to know what people have been building so far.
Phil, we're going to want to also fix the time there with a created time or a format, rather. Because the time is going to show up kind of nasty.
So how do we do that?
In the formula, we just need to wrap around it a date time format. So around created time, right before created time, start typing date time, all one word, and choose the format function there. Now, after the squiggly bracket on time, hit comma, and then in quotations, lowercase l, end your quotation, and then one more closed parenthesis. And for anybody new to formulas, it's, you can save that. This is something that you just have to practice.
Woo! Look at that. Now we got some unique, pretty looking things.
That will shortly include a name on them. Yeah.
Great. So now let's talk about the name and the linked record there. Should we convert this to a linked record?
Absolutely. So let's convert the full name reel to a linked record to our contacts table.
Actually, I'm just going to call this full name regular now because that's what it is. And we are going to make this a linked record to contacts.
And a form can only be submitted by one person. So we'll toggle off multiple record linking. It says allow. Yep, perfect. And then just save that up. And Airtable warns you that this is going to change everything, and you accept that. And you can skip that for now. So now we got the link, and if we go into contacts, we're going to see the reciprocal of that link, where contacts are now linked to forms.
Yep, here it is.
So I would say, you can just create John and Jane and whoever else we have in our database here.
Okay.
Hopefully we're not going too fast. Let us know in the chat if we are, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
And Yeah, and let's drop. So here's the thing. On that previous one, we had information like email address, company. Those data points really exist for the contact, right?
Yep.
Not
So
the form.
actually, what I'm going to do to make that just easier, should I just duplicate this to make it easy?
That works. We're gonna have to relink the tables, but that's a fine way of doing it.
Great. And then instead of, yeah, we'll relink the tables. And I'm going to get rid of this. And it's going to tell me, oh, sure, great, cool. And we'll call this one contacts. Now it's at least got all the same stuff. I think, which should I make? Does full name have to be the, or I'm going to get rid of this, delete this field. And I'm going to delete this field. Cool. And then how should I make this function now?
So let's make the full name the primary field here.
Got it. So it doesn't even need this thing.
Delete that, I think.
Oh, how do I make something new the primary field?
We can't do that. We have to actually rewrite the primary field.
Okay,
so I would say you can probably, oh yeah, that's fine.
And then this will be a single line text. Real, so I can actually write it. I'm going to delete this one.
Cool. Now we don't
now
care
I have
about
to relink them, right?
Yeah. Now yes, we will have to relink. Let's rename the table also. I think you meant to, and I think maybe it just didn't save.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Contacts, save. Okay.
There we go. And let's flip back into forms because we're going to see when you're done there. And we only want there to be one example of Jane. Yeah, perfect.
Yep. Cool.
That should work. And flip back into forms, please. And then that full name field can be reconverted to a link to contacts. Excuse me.
Good.
Toggle off the multi-record. Golden. There we go.
Great.
So when this refreshes, what we'll do is then just connect to the appropriate contacts. Did you freeze up, Phil? Or is
yeah,
that
I think we. That's a nice freezing expression. Let's see. But yeah, just to maybe go a little bit slower and maybe tell us the steps that we've done so far, Gareth, just to sum up.
100%. So yeah, well, while we wait for Phil to catch back up, the whole key concept here is that we want data to live at the source of that data in the data set where it makes the most sense. So if someone submits a form, and this is a very common practice for forms in CRMs, they're submitting information about themselves, about a company, and they're also giving you information on the form itself that is specific to the form submission. So we need to break all that information out, and that's what we've done. There we go. Phil's back.
Perfect.
Hi.
Yeah, I think he's
sorry about that.
Slowly getting back. I can't see. Yeah, there you go. You're back.
Hi.
Hey, Phil.
Yes.
So just to kind of go further down that rabbit hole, Claudia, this is like infinitely more complicatable. It's like the poorest English I've spoken all day, but what I mean is you can make this harder than we're making it now. A live example that we have in Gap Consulting's workspace is people submit an application with us. We are recording their personal information, searching to see if a company already exists that they might be representing, because we've done multiple projects for the same company, right? So there's another table of companies, there's a table of contacts that links to companies, and then there's the actual form submission itself where they gave us some information about the project they want to work on. And so all of that, those are 3 different tables, and you can go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tables deep if you want to. The big takeaway is, how many data sets are we really working with? And do we need visibility into?
Yeah, and I guess my question would also be, because we're obviously the whole reason why we do these webinars is to kind of empower our operators in the community. But I also want to show, like, if we have any founders here watching us today, what are the benefits of having a CRM built in Airtable, automating it with Zapier? If you were a founder, maybe they can send this video to their employees and turn them into their next operator.
That would be amazing.
What would you say the benefits will be?
Simply, I would put it as a single source of truth is going to allow you to make better business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, before we get into, no code building and all of that, the general way that we see things is people have dozens of spreadsheets, nothing's talking. They're working in, 10 different softwares and everyone's work is siloed. There's no consolidated vision of what's happening. And so building a tool like this allows us to create a single source of truth where all the information lives and operates. And so all the various departments can do their job on the same data. And we no longer have to worry about, things talking, because it does. Like, we built it with that in mind.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So well said, Gareth, and good point, Claudia. So Gareth, let's hop back in, man. Let's do it. So what am I linking up here?
Well, let's
full name.
Yeah, let's connect to a couple of those people in our contacts table. Let's find Jane and John from the drop-down list here.
So let me ask you this, right? I'm doing this manually right now.
Right.
How would this happen automatically as forms came in?
In plain English, what we would do is and we can build this today, I hope, is say, all right, we got a form. That triggers the automation. First thing we do is we're going to look at our contacts table and see if in our contacts table we've ever received, if we have a record with this email address. And if we find that record, then we will say, we already have this contact living in our table. So now we're going to create the form submission. And this is where we bring in the data specific to the form. So we say this was form 2 or whatever, and here are the tools they use and all of that. And we link that form submission to the contact. Now, if we don't already have a contact in our database, we create said contact, and then we do the last step. Bring in the form submission data.
So how do we go out and do that?
Well, first, before we do that, let's do one more quick fix here. On the forms table, we've got company URL, email, company. This data is redundant because it lives at the contact level now, right? So so we can either get rid of it if we don't want to see it here, or we can use lookup fields to bring in the related information per the contact.
That's very interesting. So what you're saying is, like, we're getting all this superfluous data that, like, now is going to live in contacts. So I actually think, can we just hide them?
We can, but what I don't want us to have to do is, like, map that data to 2 different places where it lives, right? So my thought is, if the email lives at the contact level, we don't want to have to redundantly update that information in other places. If we change the field type to a lookup, it automatically knows, well, this contact's email is this.
So let me ask you this. Is it then better to, the email should really be associated with the contact, right?
Agreed.
So is the contact looking up the form, or is the form looking up the contact?
The form looks up the contact. So let me rephrase that. The form connects to a contact, and therefore we know all of the information about that contact and can bring it into the form table.
So my my question there is, but that'd be cool if I was entering everything into contacts, but everything's coming in via forms. All the contact data is coming in through forms.
Yeah, but we're going to...
Like, it's not like we have a separate list of contacts.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself structurally. and it will make more sense if we build the automation first.
Let's build it. You just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Let's open up Zapier.
25 minutes left to build.
All right. Put your building hats on.
So let me ask you this, Gareth. Instead of data coming in via Zapier, like even dealing with all of that, let's just say here's like, we'll just use this form.
So this is going to break our initial assumptions if we use an Airtable form, because Airtable forms are limited to only being able to create a record in one table at a time.
It's my building hat.
So I'll make a quick Google form. How's that sound?
That works.
Gareth, do you like my building hat?
It's lovely. And why haven't I gotten one of those from NoCodeOps yet? What do I have to do?
Wait till the new brand hats come out.
I got your sweatshirt somewhere, guys. I should be wearing it. Sorry.
You're all good.
You're all good.
Okay, so demo CRM form. I think I have like, name, email, company. I'll call this form title just like community form. Great. And then I'll just do like tool 1. This will be a checkbox. Or actually, I should just go tools, right? And make this
do that too.
Tool 1.
So this is not going to be quite the same way that you described your Webflow form to me, where you had different questions bringing in like different fields with checkboxes.
Yeah. So technically, if I were to give that to you exactly here, right, it would actually look like this. It would be tool 1, multiple choice, true, and then false. It would be like this.
And I am not trying to be overly complicated. I'm just wanting to make sure that we are mapping something that really looks like it.
Great. This is great. And then the only other thing I'm missing here now is company URL. And that's that. Okay.
So we've got a form. Brilliant.
Yep.
Some of this information, the first 4 questions pertain to contact data. Everything through company URL. Everything after that is specific to the form that we've called community form. All right.
Yep.
Now can we pop into Zapier?
Yep.
Do we have to publish this? I don't use Google Forms very often. I forget.
What I do have to do is make a responses thing.
Let's do that.
I do have to make a sheet for the responses. So there it is.
Okay.
And then now I can go into Zapier. Cool. And I can create a Zap. What's going on here? There we go.
All right.
And I'll say it's coming from forms.
Yep. Our trigger is Google Forms in this case.
New form response.
Yep.
Continue. Account is my account. Great. The form is going to be community form. Continue. Now, the fun thing for all those watching, the way that Zapier works is you can only get test data if there is test data.
Thank you. Read my mind.
I got you, Gareth. So I'm going to call us Phil Tester. We'll say Phil at test. How many emails a day do you think test.test.com gets? I don't know if I brought that on my last thing, but like.
Oh man, I use test.com all the time, right? Somebody somewhere owns that domain, right? I'm sorry for that person.
I'm sure they do. He might be in our community. We had an interesting conversation about domains.
Cool. So I just submitted that, which means it appeared now in this Google Sheet automatically, which is linked to that form. So now I go in here and I go test trigger. and it's going to grab that test data, which here it is, everything I did.
Gorgeous. Love it. So we have all the information you just submitted.
Yep.
Now what we're going to do, okay, so first step is before we get to Airtable, we need to, so let's think logically about what we're going to do. We're going to search Airtable for this contact in our contacts table to see if they exist.
Yes.
The best unique identifier to use is an email address, but as you did in this example, you used a capital P for your email address, but not all the time do people use the same capital letters when they put an email address. So in order to make this absolutely unique and to reduce duplicative data,
I got
to
you.
reduce duplicative data, we are going to first convert our thing to lowercase, our email address.
Format step.
Yes, exactly. This is an internal tool in Zapier that we can work with text. As you see here, we can also work with date, time, numbers, and utilities, but we're going to do text. And we are going to take whatever email ad. So we're going to transform. We're going to lowercase, duplicative, duplicative. We're going to take the email address that was submitted. In this case, joe.doe. Interesting. So we must not have actually pulled in your test data here because we're working with test data from the...
Yeah. Which form is it coming from?
Oh, wait. I think I may have chosen the wrong form. Go me.
No, that looks right. Can we say test again?
Wait,
or is it
there's
community
one response
form?
here. It's called community form, even though I named it something different on the top here in the description, which is not great practice. So it's we shouldn't call it community test form.
Okay.
Okay, and then if I go back to this Zap, I'm saying new form response. Good, good.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah, where it says form response A, say load more and see if we can pull in.
Let's refresh that.
There she is.
I don't know where it got that A from.
I don't either.
Very odd.
It's just giving you like sample data so that you could skip the whole.
Man, maybe that's a new feature in Zapier.
That you can get. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Or maybe it's a bug.
Yeah, feature or bug, we don't know, but I'll have to ask Wade about that. Be like, Wade, did I see sample data without submitting anything?
Looks like it.
I'm telling you, I think that's what that is. I think that is Zapier solving for sample data.
Yeah, looked like it.
Very
but I'm curious
cool.
why this is saying respondent email no data, because it should have the fill at in step 2. So I think something's not quite.
Oh yeah, I got to refresh this.
Okay.
You heard it first at NoCodeOps. That's the second time. The Smart Suites, new AI features, and now the new Zapier feature as well.
So what am I putting in here? My email. Yeah.
I think yeah, that's the email we want. The email that you're asking for on the form.
Yep.
Because Google Forms has a unique capability.
Yeah, there's a way to capture emails separately if they're logged in.
Not to
cool.
overcomplicate
So now I
things.
press publish. Or no, wait, hold on. I got more to add. So this is
Did we
correct.
test it?
Output. Yeah, looks good. Or no,
Why
wait,
is
hold
this
on.
giving us joe.doe?
Okay,
here we go. Now I see.
There
okay.
we go.
So now we've converted it to lowest common denominator. We don't have to worry about a weird capital letter messing up our uniqueness. So now we're going to search Airtable's contacts table. So let's build another action step, this time talking to Airtable. And again, the whole purpose of this, folks, is to reduce and hopefully eliminate duplicative data. We're going to find a single record. And it's going to, let's continue. That looks good. How do you keep your Airtable account connection straight?
That's what our tool is going to be for one day.
There we go. Let's find the base, the proper Airtable base, whatever we've named ours.
I think we called it. Which one did we call this one? Let's take a look here. We called it Demo CRM.
There it is.
Okay.
We're
Table.
looking for contacts. Yep. We're going to search by a field, in this case, the email field in the contacts table. We're going to search for the value that we output in step 2.
Not what came in through step 1. Because there's 2 things here. That output. Cool.
We don't need a search formula, but just a quick plug for Zapier here. You can write formulas to do much more complicated, searching. We're not going to limit it to a view. That's an optional selection. And should it be continued to success when nothing is found, we don't need to worry about that. What we're going to do is check the box that says create Airtable record if it doesn't exist yet.
Oh, wow. They built that right in.
Yes, this is where Zapier is really clean, because if you were doing this in a different automation tool, you would have to build a branch that says, if I find something, do this. If I don't find something, do this. But in Zapier, they say, we're going to perform the search. And if we don't find it, we're going to create it and give it to you to use in the next step anyway. It's like a built-in error message. So I'm a fan. This part in particular.
Cool. So I'm just going to do this really quick, right? Which is name.
Let's always use the email output from step 2.
Good call. Thank you. Company.
So while Phil's mapping this out, again, just in common speak, what we're doing is we're saying we're looking for a contact that has this email address in our database. If we find one, we're going to move on to the next step, but remember what contact we found. If we don't find one, then we're going to create that contact. Phil, we don't need to map to the tools here because that's going to be on the form submission part, right?
That was going to be a question I had for you. So thank you for bringing that up, which is what happens when somebody submits multiple things and we're getting different pieces of contact level information from each form that we then want to map.
Yeah, we're going to tackle that in the very next step here.
Cool.
So let's say, to your question, Phil fills out a form and he says, I use tool 1. And then a day or 2 later, he fills out a form and says, I use tools 1 and 2. Well, when we capture these form submissions, we will see that on his first form submission, he only said tool 1. On his second one, he said 1 and 2. And we can roll that data up to Phil that says now he uses tools 1 and 2.
Great. So what do I do next?
All right, so we've got the contact built. Contact data should include the name, email, company, and company URL, I believe. Did we get that one?
So the purpose of this specific automation, if I'm hearing this correctly, right, is when a new form submission comes in, because we could do multiple things upon a form submission coming, we could do multiple automations. But the purpose of this automation is to just only exist to find if the contact exists. If it does exist, create it. If it doesn't exist, if it does exist, don't recreate it. If it,
doesn't exist, create it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. You and me both today, Gareth, on the English front.
Tell me about it.
Cool. All right. Cool. Now I got all that.
Brilliant. We're good. We can say remove the extra fields.
What does that do?
So it floats in there, especially when you create that that box you checked earlier. It's giving you like a, hey, this is a heads up. When you said create the Airtable record, I don't know. By default, I remove it before I even read the warning sign anymore because it pops up every time.
Cool. All good.
Sorry.
Moving on.
All right. Let's test the action and go into Airtable to verify that we, in this case, created a record for Phil. I always like to go step by step in an automation to make sure, we don't have to publish.
Oh, cool beans. I'll turn it off. Cool. So now let me go to our demo CRM here and go to grid view and
Contacts
contacts.
table. There we go.
There it is.
There he is.
Nice.
There's my
Well
guy.
done.
So Phil exists. We got it. We got all the data we need for Phil here. Company URL, email, full name. We're looking good.
Yep.
All right.
Gareth,
So
what's the next step? I wonder if you want to leave it for the next episode and take some Q&A, or if you think we can just
We should
include it.
probably
questions-
finish this segment of thinking, right?
Okay.
okay.
It
that
depends how
works for
long
me
it's
too.
going to take, but yeah, just to let you know.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we have one final step here, and it is to go back into Zapier, and we are going to finish up the automation by saying, now that we know, we either found a record or we created a record in the contacts table in the previous step that we just built.
Yep.
Now our fourth and final step of the automation will be to record the information about the form submission and properly link it to the contact that we identified in the previous step. So we can
Got it.
knock
So
this
this
out if
can
you wanna hit
exist
it.
within the same Zap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I press an add here and I go, now let's add all the form data essentially, right? So this is going back into Airtable.
And this one we will be creating a record because every time we receive a form submission, we want to record that we got a submission. Demo.
Okay. Demo CRM.
Mm-hmm.
The table is going to be now forms that it is going into. Now, this is weird. It used to just pop up all the fields, but now it makes you click refresh fields. That freaked me out when that first changed.
That is weird. That's a new thing for me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to press refresh fields.
Couple things here. Number one, we will never write data to what we refer to as dependent fields. A dependent field derives its output by other things happening in the data schema. So a formula is dependent, right? We can't put data there. It has its output based on its formula. Yep. Same thing with roll-up fields, lookup fields. What we want to write to here, we don't want to rewrite the email address. It lives in the contact already. We just care about what tools they filled out. So we can go down to tool 1 and mark it either true or false, depending on the response in the form.
What you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, right, is you're taking one form submission and taking some data from that and potentially putting it in the contacts, and you're taking other data from that and definitely putting it in a new record in the forms thing.
100%.
And then you're potentially linking them together. But
We
not
will
in the
always
automation.
Yeah.
Airtable.
Well, yeah, exactly right. They will be linked together by the end of this.
Cool. All right, so let me just do this.
Get rid of the we got it.
Hard coding. Yep. Okay.
Now,
and then
last
the
piece I want
form
you to do is
here,
the form.
I'm just going to write community. I'm going to hard code this.
Yes. This is not going to change because every time we receive this specific form, we always want to record it as
always
such.
Coming from the community.
Created time we don't have to worry about. That's metadata. The one piece we need here is the linked relationship to the field that to the contact. So let's find that contact connection wherever we have the name or whatever that variable is.
Okay. What should I do?
In this action right here, I think if we scroll up, I'm looking for the field. Oh, there it is, full name. Sorry, I was looking right at it. Yep. And we want to use the record ID from step 3.
This?
Yes.
Now, what is that doing?
That is saying I am linking this full name with the record that we identified in step 3. We are linking it to the form submission. And
got it.
It now looked weird to you and me because it's not like plain English, but to Airtable, that's what it is.
Got it. Now,
the ID is unique and it can't be reproduced, or it couldn't be the same name.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask this then, Gareth. One fear I have about doing this, and maybe you can soothe my fears right quick, right, is if I'm doing this right after this, what if this doesn't happen in time for then this to happen, right? Will it always, do you know what I mean? Like, could this not have
We don't have
happened
to worry
fast
about
enough?
that. These automations are sequential. So we can't move on to the fourth step until we found or created a record in step 3. So
So we can't just like go too fast.
Yep. Don't have to worry about it.
Great. Okay. So should I go next?
Yeah, let's test it. Continue test action. And this will then allow us to pop back in. And we will see in our database that if we flip to forms, we received a form from Phil.
Holy shit!
There you go. You made him a happy man today.
Look at that. And then I can
say, done.
Oh my God. Now it's linked to the record. So I don't need to now. So I can get rid of all these fields here.
Yes.
Can totally delete.
I mean, all the level, we don't need to see tool 1, 2, and 3 because that's coming in on the form submission. So there we are.
So I can delete these fields now, correct?
Email company URL. Yeah, I would toss those. Unless you need them here, I don't know why you would.
No, it's just like yeah, that's great. Because what I can also do is go back to contacts, right? And change this to I don't want to make this a formula field, right?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to build a first name and a last name, then you could use the concatenate formula here to combine them. But either way,
but what if I wanted to like full name at company?
You could do that too. You just need full name to be its own field, company to be its own field as it already is, and then you'd have to write a concatenate formula. You'd have to remap your automation because when you build
I'd have to remap the automation. But that would work here. Then it would just say Phil Tester at whatever company.
Yep. And then your form ID would bring that information in. So it would say Phil Tester at company submitted community form at 5/11/2023.
Love it.
That's amazing.
I love it.
And what we didn't solve,
guys, I need to stop you here because we do have 2 minutes left, and so before we wrap up, I did want to get at least one question from our community. You know,
let's take a question, and we'll come back to the tool thing on the next call. How's that sound, Gareth?
Yes,
I'm here for it.
First thing we'll solve on the next call.
Because we still have, bear in mind, we still have 2 episodes left of this whole build in public, and so if you want to catch up with our events, make sure you don't miss them out. You can subscribe to our calendar right there on Luma. So yeah, feel free to do that and submit your questions. Those are the questions that I then read and submit to our experts. So I'm going to pull in the form and just ask you a question, Gareth, before we wrap up, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Question from Matt Robbins. Will forms ever get conditional logic?
Well, they have a variation. Or so, okay, I think was it Matt you said asked this question? Matt, I think you're asking about Airtable's native form tool. And we have conditional logic in the sense where I can say only show this field under certain circumstances. Like maybe I say only if they filled out the email field, do I want to ask them, what's the meaning of life or something? I don't know. We can build conditions like that. However, it's not robust. And by that, I mean, there are true form tools like Google Forms, as Phil shared with today. Your actual website, Phil, you're using Webflow forms. And so there are better form tools that will, in my opinion, always be better than the native forms inside of Airtable or SmartSuite or whatever no-code tool you're using. The database tools are databases first and foremost, and they have a nice little, form on the front end, but they haven't yet become as smart as the other ones.
Brilliant. And just one last question, because it's really nice from, all of them are really good questions, but I just need to squeeze another one in from Kara Kirby. How easy are you finding the adoption level of Airtable for the use of CRMs? What are some barriers, hangups that a company might have using Airtable versus another CRM software product?
Well, I have to let Phil talk to the how easy it is, because at this point I've probably worked on so many of these that for me it's very easy, but I respect that, depends on where you're coming from in terms of your own comfortability of the software. But to the other part of your question, the typical hangups are really what we're covering here. Creating new tables where you don't necessarily need a table, duplicative data entry that we kind of covered today, the ability to properly link records across the data schema so that you're able to grab the insights that you need. It always comes down to building the right data schema up front, and that takes practice, frankly, and a lot of it is trial and error.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I'd
Phil,
say
did you
that
want to add
also just
something?
as a quick addition there, I think a lot of folks, like, they get CRMs out of the box and then they quickly run into limitations with those CRMs. So then they come to something like Airtable. But the problem with Airtable is that you can look at it and kind of use it just like a pretty list or like Excel. Like I was using it in certain ways, even like I understood the basics of linked records, but not to this extent. And I've been using this stuff for a long time, right? So it takes, like, I think, a general understanding of like how databases work in general to make this stuff really shine. And that's like a big thing, right? And so, like, I think understanding one-to-many and many-to-one and like unique IDs, like there's just these very basic things to understand about how databases work and are structured to really enable this stuff. And then I think there's always the adoption curve of like, how do you make this stuff quick for you to build and understand as the engineer on your team, but how do you make it easy for people to interact with where they don't need to understand any of this stuff and they just get all of the benefits of you understanding it?
Yeah. So you're obviously showing people what we're going to get to here in future episodes, but ultimately we want to be able to build a tool that we can drop off for other team members who don't think database, right? Which is the majority of humanity. So that's the hardest part of our jobs is adoption.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Really great.
And we'll get to interfaces or a tool like interfaces probably in the last episode of this.
Yeah,
right.
I hope so too.
And speaking of the next episodes, what are we going to do next week? What do you think we can touch upon?
Yeah, I think we're going to cover that tools issue, which I'm really excited about. And then the next big one really is two big areas in the next one that I want to cover. One, linking contacts to accounts, right? And maybe that's like very similar, right? Or maybe it's different. I don't know. But I want to hear your thinking on like how that works, because opportunities are generated manually, whereas those things are not. And I want to talk about that. And the other fun thing I want to talk about, and maybe I can prep it beforehand, is data migration. So this all looks great, but I've got CSVs of data from or old Airtable bases that are not formatted in this way that I would like formatted in this way. How do I bring those in and map those automatically, as like a one-time kind of push?
100%. Good stuff.
Some homework for you to do. And awesome. I can see Kara in the forum also says that she would love to join the community. She's not part of our Discord yet. So Kara, here's a link, and anyone else who would like to join us. We're very active in our Discord, so it's free to join, and you get to experience these amazing events and initiatives that we run in the community. So join us and I'll meet you there. And for you guys, I will see you next Thursday. Have an amazing evening. Thank you so much for coming again, Gareth. And thank you, Phil, for being an awesome tester and builder. And I'll see you next week.
Go team.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.